In this next panel, we'll be discussing some of the very latest trends and innovations. So please welcome to our stage our moderator, Mr. Michael Granoff, Managing Partner at Maniv Mobility. Joining him are some very special voices we are lucky to hear from. Please welcome Mr. Nikolai Ardei, Executive Director at Volkswagen Group Innovation, and Ms. Lorenzo Medicovier, Director of Startup and Technology at Valeo. Joining this panel online are Professor Nick Reed, founder of Reed Mobility, Mr. Gail Escribe, founding partner and CEO at Nexus Automotive International, and Ms. Angel Preston, Policy Director at Intel for IoT and autonomous vehicles.
Thank you so much. Everybody hear me? Oh, I need to use this. They put this in my ear. I thought that was good enough, but I actually need to hold the mic also. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's really amazing to be here. This is a great way to, I hope, begin the post-COVID era for smart mobility. And we're, following some very distinguished speakers, including Amnon Shashua, who in some ways, is certainly in Israel, I think one of the godfathers of the industry. So we have a lot to talk about, and ordinarily in these things, I think we have two distinguished panelists here with us, and we have three that are not with us today in person, but are with us virtually, as we've become accustomed to. And ordinarily in these sessions, I think it's traditional for everyone to introduce themselves and then to go around and then to end with like kind of a lightning round question. I thought we'd mix things up a little bit, and we'd begin with a lightning round question for all the panelists to respond to quickly. And then we'll get on with the introductions and take it from there. So the question I have is that, everyone talks about the timelines on autonomous vehicles, and Amnon talked about it just a few moments ago. But if the truth is, when we were here, many of us were here 4 or 5 years ago, I think we thought we'd be arriving at the 2021 Smart Mobility Conference in our very own autonomous cars, and that hasn't happened. And there's a few places in the world, of course, where these services are actually available to consumers, but they're very few and far between right now. And the question is, 5 years from now, let's say at the 2026 Smart Mobility Conference, will we be arriving in our own autonomous vehicles, or what will be the biggest surprise about the mobility atmosphere at that time? We'll start with the folks that are here in person and then move on to our panelists virtually.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you, Mike, for having me. Thank you for having me at the summit. I'm extremely pleased to be here. I've been waiting for that for a year and a half when I took this position. First thing, in 5 years, I'm pretty sure Israel is going to innovate still. I'm pretty sure Valeo is going to want still to work with Israeli partners. I'll give you a few numbers. We have delivered for 30 years 1 billion sensors for advanced driver assistance systems. In the next 5 years, we're going to deliver 1 more billion. So there's a huge acceleration, and I believe that safety is going to be key. When I was walking the streets of Tel Aviv yesterday, I really mean safety everywhere. It could be in micro-mobility, it could mean last mile delivery, it could mean long haul, tractors, autonomous tractors, or mining industry. Thank you.
Nicholas.
Yeah, let me go on. So thank you very much for having me here. So it's innovation and creativity cannot be taken from the screen. It evolves from people coming together, so it's really, really great and exciting for me to be here. So what will we be surprised about within 5 years? So maybe not to be surprised about having autonomous vehicles in the road. So Professor Shashua just told us about this will happen next year already. And maybe we will have the first drones in megacities taking passengers autonomously from one place to the other.
Okay, very good. Angel, I know you were supposed to join us in person, and unfortunately, for some reason, that didn't work out, and we're very sorry about that. But why don't you go ahead and answer the lightning round question before we get to the formal introductions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry about that as well. I wish I was there with you all. But yeah, I kind of have the same response as Nikolai. I think autonomous air taxis may be the surprise in the next 5 years. So, you know, although the technology isn't new, I think it being an option for consumer mobility and urban transportation, I think will be a new innovation within the next 5 years.
Terrific, thank you. And Nick, why don't you answer the lightning round question? Are you with us there, Nick? There you are.
I am, yeah. Hi, thanks, Michael. So I'm going to start slightly controversially. At least it would be in the UK. I think in 5 years' time, the surprise for me would be a move towards a road user charging scheme. So we know that governments are losing revenue in terms of fuel duties as the shift to electric vehicles comes around. So how is that revenue to be replaced? How will the governments pay for roads in the future? And I think that will need to be through a road user charging scheme. And I think that might play into the rollout of automated vehicles as well, where the fee for the road use is part of the payment for the use of an automated vehicle as well. So yeah, I would like to see that happening and happening in a way that was equitable, that pushed us towards that net zero target that's being talked about in Glasgow this week, and helps to serve communities and businesses in achieving their mobility needs.
We'll have to circle back to that topic, Nick, because that's something dear to my heart. That many years ago as a graduate student, I said, you know, how come there's this market failure in that this really in-demand real estate of roads is, for the most part, given away for free. But Gail, let's hear what you have to say about what will surprise us 5 years from now.
In fact, Michel, we are an aftermarket champion, so we are not in the original equipment. And at the moment, through our investment committee, Mobilion in Israel, where we invest in plenty of startups, we are getting ready for any scenario. Be it taxis or shuttles, etc. We are investing at the moment on companies that will provide accessories, that will facilitate teleoperations, that will facilitate retrofit options for autonomous vehicles. So that's fundamentally our mindset. I'm not making any bet. I simply want our community of 2,000 companies in the world in 145 countries to be ready for any type of autonomous vehicle that would emerge in the coming years. And I will share with you a bit later, what type of services we are privileging once those cars and those vehicles will be available.
Terrific. And while we have you there, why don't we go in reverse order now, and we'll do the more traditional introductions, but please just keep it to a minute or less describing the work that you do. So go ahead.
So we have 2,000 companies in the world. We are championing the automotive aftermarket, so the cars that are already on the road. And we see three, let's say, priorities when it comes to autonomous vehicles. First, it doesn't prevent you, from making sure that the individual that is in the car is capable to take control of the wheels. So we are at the moment in Israel investing in accessories such as real-time cognitive monitoring with a company called Adam, in which we have invested through our investment funds. We are as well very much looking at teleoperations. And if there is anyone in the audience that has, started to work on it or is largely involved in that, it's an item in which we will develop services, take remote control of any vehicle, be it a taxi or a shuttle, whatever, is something in which we see lots of potential in terms of service. And then, we are talking here about cars that will come on the road, fine, but you have old cars, less than 20 years old, that we could retrofit, and transform into an autonomous vehicle. We see lots of developments there in terms of service. And we are looking at the moment around the world at any options that would enable our community to transform a fairly premium car, that is less than 20 years old, into an autonomous vehicle. So these are three examples of services in which our investment company Mobilion is really focusing on to be ready with all the developments that we're going to discuss around the table.
Terrific. Nick, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, so my name is Nick Reed. My background is psychology, actually. I was a psychologist, cognitive psychology and visual perception. And I was applying that academic background in road safety, so studying driver behavior, things like distraction, fatigue, alcohol, and their impacts on driving behavior. And then with the DARPA challenges, with the emergence of the Google self-driving car project, I really recognized the impact that automation might have on the transport system and pushed for research studies in that area, working at the Transport Research Laboratory here in the UK. Led many studies in that area. The world's first grocery delivery was in a project that I led. And then had a few years at Bosch as the head of mobility R&D. And for the last 2 years, I've been working on my own as an independent consultant through my company, Mobility. And my focus is really around the factors that will allow the safe deployment of automated vehicles. How can we collect the data that enables us to say that automated vehicles are operating safely and ethically and delivering all those benefits that we know to be there?
Fascinating. Thank you. Angel, you're coming to us from the city in which my own smart mobility journey began a long time ago. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about what you're doing?
Yes, hi, I'm Angel Preston. I'm the Policy Director of Autonomous Vehicles and IoT at Intel. I'm a public policy professional. I have, years of expertise and experience in the automotive industry. I spent quite a good time at the U.S. Department of Transportation, so working as the regulator. And then after that, I had the opportunity to represent the interests of policy interests of the automotive ecosystem in the leading trade association in the United States. So each of those positions prepared me for my role that I have today as I work closely advocating for the policy interest with regards to autonomous vehicles and Internet of Things for Intel, and work closely with the regulator, U.S. Department of Transportation, Congress, other trade associations, as well as the interest groups that also want to see the safe deployment of autonomous vehicles sooner rather than later in the U.S.
Terrific. And maybe later in the conversation, you can tell us whether this bill that just passed the U.S. Congress this weekend is going to help advance the interests of autonomous cars. But meanwhile, Nikolai, tell us about yourself and your work.
Yes, I'm in charge of group innovation. This is the innovation organization of the Volkswagen Group. And this is a worldwide organization with also our most important innovation hub here in Tel Aviv. Connect is its name. And we are responsible for all the brands of the Volkswagen Group, from heavy-duty trucks to the super sports vehicles like Lamborghini. And and before that, I joined Audi as a head of powertrain development, and before that, 18 years BMW in several functions.
Very good. And Lon Mai?
So hello again, my name is Lorenzo Medicovier. I'm in charge of the incubator of startup and technology. At Valeo, we have two axes of work. One is electrification and the other one is ADAS. And we invest about 12 billion euros. We have 12 billion euros of order intakes in 2018 to 2020. So what I like very much is the products and the technologies. And this amount of money that we can put on innovations, it's one of my big motivations to work for Valeo. Beyond that, I have a background of electronics, and I also worked with Thales. I have the opportunity to work in telecommunications. Now the car is connected, autonomous, so I'm very happy that all comes in one.
Terrific. So, we have here with us in person two people who come from the traditional automotive industry. I'd like to maybe start with you guys and then hear from our remote panelists as well on kind of the question around how you see the traditional OEMs interacting in this smart mobility future in a world of increasingly autonomous vehicles. with the newcomers, the Waymos, cruises, which of course is also integrated into some of the traditional industries. So there's lots of overlap. But talk about some of that give and take between traditional and the new tech companies.
Maybe I will start with this question. So, of course, this is a big transformation for the conventional automotive industry. And of course, the conventional automotive industry, well, it's very experienced in how to make a car type approvable, how to be up to all the legislation, to have it in a high level of quality and so on, and having all the scaling up in the huge amount of factories around the world. So of course it is a challenge for the conventional industry to set up all this software competency, which we are about, very powerful, and we will have a big size in that respect very soon. But of course, I think the recipe at the moment is to just collaborate and to cooperate with all these amazing startups and very agile companies who inflame us in order to get into this transition.
Terrific.
So I was lucky to be chosen because I was there at the right time to launch the team of Valeo in the Bay Area of San Francisco. And I had to ask myself that specific question: what am I doing here? How am I going to be of interest not only for the OEMs, but also for the tech companies? And what happens is that I realized that if you have technologies and you invest a lot of effort, we invest, I believe, about 56 or 60% of R&D effort, which is 12%. Of R&D to sales, which is more a tech company than the automotive average. And if you excel at what you do best in terms of design, development, and so on, then you are a good partner not only for the OEMs like Volkswagen, Audi Group, but also for tech companies like Waymo. And we're very lucky to be part of the partners that were chosen. And beyond that, it's a momentum. If you invest and you are capable of attracting people, then after that, you have to put effort into being at the top. And for this, we think that we cannot do it alone. And you know that, Mike, because we're happy to be one of your LPs. I do believe that VCs, for instance, bring us the insights that we cannot have. We cannot be everywhere. We are not connected everywhere. I will not tell you jokes about Valeo telling me, Valeo? What is that company? Because they didn't know Valeo. And I think partnerships with VCs, with you, Mike, and your team, it's extremely powerful and helpful. And I can see Anne as well. I'm working with Anne Ikar in Israel. And what we do together is we exchange strategy, points of interest, and then you go and scout. You give me advice on who to meet, etc. And then for like everyone, and I'll be spending time with some of you guys to discuss about technologies.
So the theme seems to be one of cooperation, one of the strengths of traditional industry, along with the innovation of the technology companies. And anybody from our remote guests want to comment further on that? Nick?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree completely with Nikolai and Loemai on their comments, particularly on that the ability of tech companies to achieve that automotive grade. That really is a big challenge, and the automotive sector is continually evolving, and it has done throughout the history of the automotive sector. With Toyota originally being a sewing machine company, and Bosch, originally just making armatures that made engines much more efficient, and then spread to all the different products it makes today. Where I think there is a difference, though, in how that collaboration might be achieved, and the potential risks to organizations today, is in the scaling when it comes to software and AI and data. and the organizations that have that data and allow and share, and how that data is shared with other organizations, which might fundamentally change the kind of power dynamic between organizations and who has the upper hand.
Got it. Maybe I'll call on Angel and shift the conversation a little bit more in a direction of the policies surrounding autonomy in particular, and maybe even broader than that. We can get into a conversation about like the push and pull of the market, and to the degree to which there will be a sort of consumer pull, a real demand for higher levels of autonomy, how much will be pushed, how regulators will interact with that. Angel, what do you think about that?
Yeah, great question, Michael. I think that there will be a pull from consumers, with the demand for autonomous vehicles, mobility as a service. But I also think there will be a push from regulators as well, not necessarily from the emission side, but I think for the safety side. The promise that autonomous vehicles hold for safety is just tremendous. Here in the United States, we have over 37,000 fatalities as a result of, motor vehicle crashes. And, that when we have a technology that can help to put a dent in that, a significant dent in those numbers and save lives, that's very important. It's promising to see the movement that we have in Germany, passing, their regulation to allow for the commercial deployment of autonomous vehicles. And we're hoping in the United States that momentum carries over for us as well. Because we all know what this technology can do. And so that's why as policymakers, as executives in these companies, as we are advocating, strongly as possible to get the deployment of autonomous vehicles on the roads. And so at Intel and Mobileye, that is a priority for us. And we definitely want to see that happen in the US sooner.
Yeah, that's a terrific point around safety, because I saw that the US numbers came out last week, I think. And, all of the gains that were made over many decades in safety and road fatalities declining have in recent years begun to reverse. And I think we can all speculate as to why that's the case. But I think the main reason probably has to do with the attention of the driver. And the fact of the matter is that we all are now constantly connected, and we all now have the ability to be, doing many things at any time. And sometimes people feel as though driving gets in the way of that. And so the safety imperative in pulling forth more highly automated vehicles, I think, is something that we cannot lose sight of. Gail, what do you think about safety and regulation and the push and pull of the market and regulators?
I think that, of course, the regulators will do what they have to do to make sure that the human beings are protected as it should be. At the same time, I'm not sure that the regulators will think about all those the range of services that will have to be developed, to host the autonomous vehicle and to make sure that during its lifetime. We optimize the capabilities and the good news that the autonomous vehicle will bring to us. So I was giving the example just before of teleoperations. Teleoperations is something that I would say will even increase safety if you are remotely capable to take control of any autonomous vehicle. Imagine that you are on level 4 and suddenly something happens. With the individual on board, teleoperation could make sure that the car is moving into the right direction without creating any fatality. Okay, so that there is a big, large ecosystem made of services that are already today, I would say, in the brains of lots of startup leaders. And I think that this is really where we are trying at the moment to focus. So the post equipment is driving an enormous ecosystem. And this, I believe, is not always in in the mind of regulators. But lucky we are in Israel. We have lots of brains that will help magnify, what regulators are trying to secure, because we can do even better than what they can imagine.
Terrific. As expected, with so many amazingly talented and distinguished panelists, our time is flying by here. But in our last few minutes, I'd love to get everyone to just say a word or two around what they think the remaining hurdles are on autonomous, and to the degree to which and their view, I would say, on sensors, which is always a category of controversy as to more is better or less is necessary. So maybe Angel, we'll start with you here and try to keep it to about 30 seconds so everyone has a chance to talk about.
Okay, thanks, Michael. I think two of the hurdles are AV maps and the accuracy of the perception systems. With the AV maps, we know that they contain the information about the physical environment that's needed for the AV to drive safely. And traditionally these maps are created with specialized vehicles that are going around and around. It can cost a lot of money. It's expensive, to collect enough data for that. It prohibits and limits the scalability for that mapping. At Mobileye, we've been able to, with our map creation, that allows us to map the world efficiently at scale, so that we can place our AVs in any city, and we're able to map that city even if we haven't been there before. So that's a huge benefit. And then the second, quickly, is the hurdle of the perception systems. In order to prove the safety of AVs, developers must prove that their perception systems can perform with a failure rate that is much better than human drivers. And so to demonstrate that with real world data, a test vehicle would have to drive billions and billions of miles to be able to simulate that, and that's not feasible. However, if you have an AV that has multiple redundant and independent sensing systems, then that problem becomes much more manageable. And so that's our approach at Mobileye, and that's the approach that we strongly advocate.
Terrific. Al, give us one hurdle that you think is the biggest.
I think it's time. You said it when you started, everything should have already been done, and here we are, it's not done. So I think we have to be a bit patient with this enormous revolution.
Nick?
For me, it's proof. So how do you prove that the automated vehicle is operating safely? What data do you need to collect? How do you share that with a regulator? How do you know it's robust? And then in terms of sensors, I think you need as many as to be able to make that proof. If you can do it with fewer, great, but you need to be able to prove it.
Excellent. I hear a lot of Maniv Mobility portfolio companies sort of in the echoes here, with Cognito with proof and simulation, and Phantom Auto with teleoperation, but I won't plug those right now because I want our remaining panelists to have a shot at this question. So, Nicola.
Well, as a guy from the very early phase in the development process, I would say I would focus on what is possible, and what is possible can be deduced from our very poor sensors in our faces and the acceleration sensor in our bottom. So this is obviously feasible, but of course, I think the goal is, of course, to reduce the effort to be taken. We have to reduce the costs, like Joshua told us today, below 5,000 euros. This means no laser scanners on our cars. Imaging radar and cameras should be feasible. So this should work. And of course, what we are asking the legislation is they should tell us how to type approval a car. This is the question, what is safe enough? Yeah. Because 100% safety isn't possible, so what is safe enough and what we have to prove?
You get the final word.
And I have 2 seconds. So I agree with all the above. I think what makes it so difficult is the complexity. When you have your eyes, your ears, your sons, I have 3 children. When I raised them and they stood up the first time, they stumbled and they fell. I don't want that to happen if one of my children gets into an autonomous car. I want that to be right the first time, because safety, it's something that we have to pay attention to, and it's intransigence. There's no way out of it. complexity, and complexity can be solved only if we work together. That's
terrific.
Thank you.
I have so many more questions, but we're out of time, so I'll have to continue this conversation another time. I want to thank our remote panelists for their patience and for joining us remotely. And of course, I want to thank the two of you for coming to Israel and being here in person, as well as everyone else who's joining us from outside Israel. It's so exciting to have guests with us once again. And thank you to everyone for your being a great audience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.